Hello, everyone, and welcome. My name is Elsie Burrows with the Travel and Tourism Research Association. TTRA unites the best and brightest in the travel and tourism industry, and we are happy you are with us today. Before we begin, I would like to remind you about several upcoming events on the TTRA calendar. The Asia Pacific Chapter Conference is taking place in Bangkok, Thailand, November 30th through December 3rd. We're also gearing up for Marketing Outlook Forum, January 27th through 29th in Fort Worth, Texas. Registration is now open, so be sure to register for early bird savings. If you would like to learn more about MOF and all things TTRA, please visit ttra.com. Friendly reminder that we are using the Zoom webinar platform, so we'll take our questions in the Q&A and answer as many as we are able to at the end of this call. Welcome to Unveiling the 2024 U.S. Resident Sentiment Board's Tourism Findings. I would like to thank our presenters, Kelsey Waite, the Director of Client Engagement, and Brian Skreptak, Director of the Client Services at Longwoods International. Now, I'll hand this over to Brian.
Thank you so much. Very much appreciated. And good morning or afternoon to all of our TTA members and partners on this call. Thank you for having us back again today. Kelsey and I are very excited to be here. As she noted, my name is Brian Skreptak. I am the Vice President of Client Engagement at Longwoods International. Just so that you're aware of how we're going to approach today's webinar is Kelsey will be joining us later on, sort of stepping in for the second half of this webinar. She's going to walk us through some more overview findings and then wrap it up with key takeaways and get us started with any questions that might come about during the webinar. That said, today we're very excited to be providing a sneak peek at the 2024 U.S. resident sentiment results, especially since this information is fresh off the press, but full results will be released next month in December, so keep an eye out for that, and we will do another reminder at the very end of this. So let's get us started, but before we dig into results, for those of you unfamiliar with Longwoods, I just want to give a quick background and then I will move on. But in short, we were founded in 1978 as a market research consultancy. We have been focused on tourism since 1989. Believe it or not, our largest and most well-known product began fielding quarterly in 1990 and is still fielded on a quarterly basis. That's Travel USA. But in fact, we started that product on postcards in the mail. So imagine that and all the technology changes we've experienced as an organization. Very grateful for all of those. We do have satellite offices all over the US, but we are headquartered in Columbus, Ohio in the United States. And then, of course, our Toronto, Ontario office in Canada. Lastly, it's right here on the slide, but we work with over 175 destinations and brands just like you. So thank you so much for being a part of today's webinar. I'm still teasing you, aren't I? Today, this is what we'll be taking a look at. I'm going to walk us through a brief background on how we got here and a quick overview of the methodology of this study. I'll then walk us through about half of the study's highlights, and this will include annual trends and generational comparisons. My superstar colleague on the camera to my right, Kelsey Waite, will then jump in and walk us through the remaining key findings from the report and end with key takeaways from today's webinar. We'll hopefully have time for some questions at the end, but if not, we will share our info on this very last slide. So do please feel free to enter questions into the chat, as was mentioned earlier, and we will certainly get back to you if you're reaching out to us. So let's get started. All right. After almost 45 years of business in this industry, this really all began with our clients. So around 2017 and 2018, Longwoods and its clients, as the clients were coming to them, we understood and we heard from our clients who were expressing a demand for understanding more about the communities our industry serves. And not just the tourists we drive to our communities, but the residents who live in our communities and are impacted by the tourism that we're driving. So this led us to our 2018 national study that we conduct in partnership with Destinations International on an annual basis, and we've been conducting it in partnership with them ever since then. We are actually back for our 7th year on this, and this type of information has continued to gain relevance in the industry and become that much more important for the decisions we make as DMOs and brands in this industry. So, covered a little bit of history now, but briefly, I want to cover the why behind conducting this type of research, especially for those of us who maybe haven't conducted something like this before, and to reiterate really the importance of community engagement for our industry as we look towards the future. First reason I have, if your destination is focused on any of these following areas like destination stewardship, sustainability, economic development, master planning, etc. I'm sure you've all heard these buzzwords in conferences as of late, but what we know is that resident sentiment is a crucial key performance indicator to approach any of these topics holistically and provide your residents in your community a seat at the table or at least a voice in the decision making that impacts their daily lives regarding tourism. Secondly, there's always been a concern of over-tourism in the industry, but post-pandemic, this really came into the spotlight for many communities that either have experienced or are still experiencing over-tourism. What we really don't want is what you see on this slide, which is public backlash, right? We want to avoid that as an industry. And we already know many places in Europe are beginning to cap the number of tourists coming to certain areas. And even here in the US, we have seen some communities begin to put in bans on short-term rentals. Of course, all of this having a major impact on the volume of visitation and the economic impact these visitors provide our communities. And lastly, but most importantly, yes, we are providing residents a seat at the table. And yes, consistent engagement and outreach is crucial to the communities we represent as an industry. However, one of the most crucial pieces of this is that starting that conversation and the tool for continued education and engagement regarding how tourism benefits and residents alike. This information helps you keep a pulse on what's most important for your community and how your organization can put its best foot forward. So without further ado, now I'm going to overview quickly our methodology on this study so that everyone's on the same page when we're combing through this data. As noted, I'm going to repeat it again, we do conduct this in partnership annually with Destinations International. We very much appreciate their partnership. A little bit about methodology here. We did survey this year's survey was in field in July 2024. We did have a representative sample of about 4,000 respondents in the US. What was the keyword that I just said there, which was representative? Longwoods takes this very seriously, and those of you who are familiar with Longwoods totally know that because I'm sure you've heard it 1,000 times, but we are always wanting to ensure that the data we're providing our clients is highly accurate and reliable. On that note, please know that our margin of error is going to be plus or minus 3 percentage points. So it has to be outside of that margin of error for us to consider something statistically significantly different. Really quickly, I'm just showing this slide because I mentioned earlier, we have included some generational comparisons in today's webinar, and here's what those look like. I don't need to go through them. Most of you know what Gen Z, Millennials, Gen X, Boomers, and the silent generation are. That being said, the first thing I want to dig into is really just overall sentiment about tourism and some of the changes we've seen, even going back to 2020. Overall, I think tourism is good for my local area. This has seen steady improvement since 2020. It's actually up 7 points from 2020 and up 3 points year over year with those respondents who agree with this statement. So already we're off to a great start. My state government is doing a good job balancing resident quality of life and visitor satisfaction. This is a direct tie to destination stewardship, one of those topics I just mentioned earlier. But good news here, a 7-point increase year over year from 2023. Again, a nice strong showing here, and is going to be similar for what we're about to see on the next slide regarding local governments. My local government is doing a good job of balancing resident quality of life and visitor satisfaction, again, up 7 points year over year. Here, the statement that we asked folks to agree or be neutral or disagree on In general, the positive benefits of tourism outweigh the negative impacts, and this is up a whopping 10 percentage points since 2020. Again, anything double digit is going to be excellent news as long as it's moving in the right direction. But more importantly, and you're going to hear this from myself and Kelsey, probably pointed out a few times throughout this webinar, but we want you to take a look at the neutrals on this slide. This group is going to be our group that we should aim our educational and engagement efforts towards, as we want to consider them sort of the undecided voter, and that's where we're going to have the most wiggle room as far as making and changing those impressions or perceptions about our industry. But more good news I want to point out here, that neutral is actually down 3 points since 2020, and even better, those who disagree with this statement is going to be down 7 points versus 2020. Again, both significant shifts there, moving in the right direction. Here, the first statement at the very top is I care about the success of the tourism industry in my local area. We know that 6 in 10 agree with this statement. And just below that, it's I want to see tourism thrive in my local area. Again, another 6 in 10 who agree with that statement. So once more, off the bat, we have very positive sentiment. This slide alone tells us that the majority of Americans care about the success of the tourism industry and want to see the industry thrive in their local area. My local area benefits from a strong tourism industry. This is up 8 points in just 2 years since 2020. So again, very significant and 5 points outside of that margin of error that we're looking for. Last slide on this section of the study. And if the message from this section of the study isn't clear yet, note, I want tourism to be important in my local area. Once again, up 7 points from 2020. So a lot of overall sentiment is headed in the right direction. We've gained momentum since 2020. Obviously, all of this is very positive for our industry. But of course, there's always going to be places where we can continuously improve and continue to engage. So next, we're going to take a look at sentiment around involvement and engagement with the tourism industry. First statement at the top of this, I welcome tourists to this area. We know 6 in 10, or about 6 in 10, agree with this statement. Just below that, I look forward to showing off this area when friends and family visit. Another 6 in 10 agreeing with this statement. Again, we've got a majority here, but check out those neutrals. Both around a quarter of residents we can still engage with more and bring to the table. Now, that's not to say we can't change the mind and disagree, but that is our opportunity, which is quite significant when you think about this from a more holistic perspective. First statement at the top on this slide, still in that involvement engagement section of our study, I feel I'm an ambassador for this area, even amongst tourists I don't know. 4 in 10 agree with this, a quarter are neutral, and this is likely an area in the US we should consider as room for improvement, right? We know 3 in 10 disagree. So once again, a nice quarter, which is a good spot to be in as far as neutral, but certainly something we should focus on in our messaging and the way we're engaging with our communities. Below this, I recommend local tourist sites to people who are visiting my area. Over half agree with this statement. We've still got about a quarter who are neutral here, and only 2 in 10 disagree. So again, we're working with about a quarter of respondents where we have good chances at improving sentiment, and this is our real opportunity. Last slide for this section for involvement and engagement with tourism. First up, I consider myself informed / up to date on news about tourism in this area. Almost half agree with this statement. About 3 in 10 are neutral, more than the quarter we've been seeing in the past few slides, and about a quarter who disagree. Just below that, when I come across local tourism news, I'm interested in finding out what's happening. Over half agree with this statement. We know about 3 in 10 are neutral, and less than 2 in 10 disagree. quick takeaway from this section and this slide, we know folks are interested in when they're coming across local tourism news, but we do have some room for improvement regarding engagement and educational outreach as an industry. The next section here is going to be focused on tourism development and growth. It's actually the last section of the results that you're going to hear my voice on, I promise. And then I'm going to kick it over to Kelsey to hop in the driver's seat here. But first up, my municipal/local government is doing a good job managing the pace of tourism development. Only 4 in 10 US respondents agree with this statement. We know about a third are neutral and 2 in 10 disagree. Residents are consulted when major tourism development takes place in this area. We're even less enthusiastic here, with less than a third who agree, 3 in 10 who are neutral, and about 4 in 10 who disagree. So looking at this slide, we certainly have our work cut out for us when it comes to managing the pace of development and how we consult or engage with our residents when it comes to tourism development. But let's not get too gloomy just yet here, folks. There's still plenty of bright spots when it comes to development and growth. Here on this slide, we're looking at, I believe tourism should be encouraged here. This is up significantly since 2020. In fact, it's up a whopping double digit, 10 points. But again, check out both neutral and disagree. We've done a really good job at closing the gap here on these. So this is certainly an area that we've made improvements and good strides on when looking back in the past 4 years. On this slide here at the very top, I would like to see more tourists coming to my area. We know that over half of our respondents agree with this statement. A quarter is neutral, which is our sweet spot, right? We've got that quarter that we're working with, and we know 2 in 10 disagree with this statement. Lastly, on this slide, I support building new tourism facilities that will attract visitors to this area. Half of our respondents agree with the statement. 3 in 10 are neutral, even more than that quarter, so even more opportunity here, woo woo. And 2 in 10 who disagree with this statement here. All right, I support tourism growth. Another bright spot we have for the industry. This has also gained a double-digit 10 points since 2020. This is when we all do our little happy dance on this call. Again, we are closing the gap on those who are neutral or naysayers versus what we saw in 2020. So certainly positive improvements here. The last slide you have to put up with me on, and then I'm going to kick it to Kelsey. But first statement up, we should develop/host more major events to attract tourists to our area. Another strong showing of improvement in the last 4 years. Those who agree is up 8 points since 2020. And once again, check out us closing the gap on those who are either neutral or who disagree with this statement. And this is so important because we know that events are shared assets, and both residents and visitors attend events in their community, in your communities. So these findings suggest that residents increasingly understand this connection. So as an industry, as I would like to say, we did good. Now, I'm going to stop sharing my screen really quickly, and I will let my colleague, Kelsey Waite, jump in the driver's seat and bring us home for today's webinar.
Thanks, Brian. And to, not be biased, but a slightly biased, here in Indianapolis, we have been doing such a good job with developing more major events and festivals. Literally last weekend, we had Taylor Swift for 3 whole nights, and it was really exciting. And we had the swim trials for the US Olympics. I don't know. It's really fun. And as a resident, I would be in that positive, I agree statement as well. But really, it's so important to ask your residents what they're thinking. That's why DMOs exist. It's not to provide a fun place for tourists. Yes, that's the benefit of our jobs, but it's really to bring that impact for our residents so that they're seeing it in their quality of life, their pocketbooks, and just making the destination a place that they want to part of and that they are proud to live in. And so with that, talking again about like pocketbooks and stuff, talking about the economy. So Brian had mentioned earlier that residents really wanted tourism to be important in their local area. And here we have a very similar sentiment where 58% are saying that they want tourism or they see tourism as important to the local economy. So the greater picture in terms of the health of their local area. And we can see that we have the smallest disagree when it comes to the statement in 2024, but it has been strong and the majority since 2020 have agreed. When we're looking at investment, so we see here that 60% of people agree that tourism encourages investment in our local economy. So this actually has gone up 9 points since 2020. So people are seeing the new hotels being built, the new food garages being built, more tax funds coming into the economy because of those investments that are being made in local destinations. We have two on this one. So the top one here, the economic impact of tourists in our area helps to support industries and businesses not directly related to tourism. So this is a really exciting question and it's new to us this year. Destinations International even includes it as part of their Catalyst report, but we're seeing here that 55% of people agree that they understand that tourism trickles down to not just those tourism specific industries, but to the support industries, to the suppliers in the destination. Then the bottom question, we have the growth in tourism is causing prices to rise, making these less affordable for residents. So this really relates to the cost of living. So that includes housing, food, entertainment. People are noticing a squeeze on their wallet, but we can see here that only 42% agree that the squeeze on their wallet is coming from tourism. So we do have, like Brian kept mentioning, that 29, so that 1/4 to 1/3 of people in that neutral, I'm not really sure what's causing prices to rise, and I'm not really sure I'm seeing prices rising. And so then 29% are disagreeing, so AKA saying that tourism is not the reason that prices are rising. So kind of positive news here that we do not have a majority blaming tourism on the increased prices for them in their cost of living. But being that housing is definitely a piece of the cost of living, and Brian kind of touched upon like Airbnb restrictions and stuff. And so we wanted to ask about housing affordability. So this top statement is housing is becoming less affordable in this area due to tourism. Again, we don't have a majority saying they agree. We have a lot of that, I don't know, being 25%, and then over 1/3 of people saying, no, housing is not less affordable just because of tourism. So while we see 42% being the higher proportion, it's not the majority of residents. The bottom statement here is my household standard of living is higher because of the money tourists spend here. So 33% agree with this statement, and over 1/4 are neutral, and well over 1/3 disagree. So the higher majority of people here are saying, no, the standard of living is higher, not because of the money tourists spend here. So people aren't seeing the benefits of tourism at the household level. So they are understanding the overall benefit, like they want tourism in their destination. They know that it's really impacting industries and growth and development within the city or state as a whole, but they're just not quite seeing it trickling down to their own individual wallets yet. And like Brian keeps saying, it's a lot of that community engagement, that advocacy, that talking to your residents. So we all on this call know that the money that tourists spend in a destination does end up helping residents, but we just have to better communicate that to our stakeholders and those that live within our destinations. And kind of going on with the tourist spending dollars, we have without the tax revenues we get from tourists, we would have to pay higher state and municipal taxes for government programs and services. This is great, 52%. So the majority of people are on board. They understand that, like, while I might not be seeing an extra $5 in my pocket every month because of tourism, I know I'm not spending an extra $100 in taxes. And that's thanks to the tourists spending money in my local area. We have 19% of people saying, no, they don't agree. Like, the tourist spending in their taxes doesn't help me. This is a lot harder of a group to sway, is that 19%, but where we do have a better opportunity is getting those in that neutral area. Again, some infographics. I know a lot of destinations have been doing press releases where it says in 2024, this is a made-up number, everyone, so don't you be writing it down. But in 2024, those people in my local area, the tourists, they spent $5 billion in taxes, and that equates to a savings of $1,000 for every individual household. Things like that, and getting the word out is really going to help shift those neutrals into those that agree that we're seeing the benefits from the tourist spending. So away from dollars for a bit and fun stuff, quality of life. So we ask about this in many different ways. So the top one here is quality of life in my local area has improved because of increased tourism. So we see that 41% agree, but we have a really large group, that 32% who are unsure if tourism has impacted their quality of life in a positive or negative way. And then 28% disagree, and they believe that tourism has decreased the quality of life. Below that, attractions and leisure facilities are becoming overcrowded because of more tourists. So Brian had mentioned earlier that residents are wanting more festivals, they're wanting more events, and that also brings in more people. Here, people, 43% say that yes, tourists are causing my local amenities to be more crowded. But what we see is that positive side, even though it says neutral and disagree, on this one, that means good. Like, they aren't seeing overcrowding in those locations. Which I just think it's so funny because people say that it's more crowded, but I want these things anyways. And that's really true here. So I have more recreational opportunities, like places to go and things to do, because of tourism in this area. So more residents are understanding that tourism helps support getting many of these amenities brought to their destination so that they can enjoy. And they are understanding that it's often due to tourism. We'd have a 7-point increase from 2020 in those that agree, and then we have a 6-point decline in those that disagree. So we are really shifting some of those negative thoughts to neutral and some of those neutrals to yes, I am seeing the benefits. I do understand that tourism is helping bring more things to do and impacting positively my quality of life. Even though we might not be at the majority yet, we are definitely still growing in these positive trends. So we asked about shopping and dining opportunities. So 48% think that tourism has played a part in better shopping opportunities compared to 53%. So yes, the majority there saying tourism has improved the dining opportunities in their local areas. So I thought that was interesting that there is a 5-point shift there between shopping and dining, where people are seeing more positive impacts on dining than shopping. This question here is, tourism supports the preservation of local culture and protects the community's authenticity. This one being 58% is wonderful news. People are really seeing the benefits of the work that a lot of these destinations like you guys in state level have been doing, where you are really highlighting and putting a focus on the unique culture and heritage of your destinations. And that's really paying off. The residents are seeing your messaging too. When you're highlighting different neighborhoods within the community, different organizations and different groups of people, and really wanting to tell the true story of your destination and not just slapping a paint over it and saying like, yes, we have a beach and don't you go downtown. No, like people are wanting to highlight what is going on in your actual communities, and the residents are really appreciating that here. When we talk about environment, we are seeing a little bit less of the positive news than some of the other points that we've made in this presentation. It's not bad news, it's just less positive. So the top one here is the tourism industry values sustainability and our natural resources. 43% agree, but we have that huge chunk. So over a third of people saying, I don't really know how the industry values the environment and sustainability. And then we have just about a third saying, no, I don't think that they value natural resources. So we all travel. We have been to hotels that have the little green cards about don't wash your towels every day. We all know that we're hiring teams to pick up trash within our communities, but are the residents seeing those efforts as well? That's to be determined. And then at the bottom, we have tourists are respectful of our natural areas. So we have it even lower here, that 40% agree that tourists are respectful of the nature. Again, a big group here in that I don't know. So we all know what we're doing in our communities, but we just have to get that voice out to our residents that we are having leave no trace messaging. We are doing monthly river cleanups as an organization, things like that. Things that you're already doing, you can promote those too. And then the last one for environment, tourists should be educated on how to travel responsibly and care for our natural resources. So almost 70% of residents agree that this needs to be a top priority, that tourists should be educated on how to responsibly travel. And again, we're doing it. We just need to let them know, like they care. And this is very obviously clear that they care about what's happening with the environment when it relates to tourism. So we have a larger section here about tourism employment. So we actually expanded this module this year, and come to find out, most Americans agree that tourism offers many entry-level opportunities, but the perception kind of decreases when we talk about long-term opportunities and career paths. And we'll be able to see that in the next few slides. But one thing I wanted to note is that millennials are much more positive about tourism employment than other generations. And that's really shown here. So we have the US norm is on top, and then we have a breakdown of generations below. But the statement is the tourism industry offers many entry-level employment opportunities. One thing that I know I pointed out millennials, but it's because they're the most positive. So 66% agree there's a ton of entry-level opportunities in tourism. But these generations down here are probably not the ones looking for entry-level opportunities. It's gonna be this Gen Z, and they're the ones that disagree the highest. They are unsure. They are not seeing as many entry-level employment opportunities as these older generations think there are. So there's a little bit of disconnect there. Are millennials the hiring managers and the Gen X hiring managers who are like, I have all of these open opportunities, like, please come work here. I know that these opportunities exist, but then marketing those jobs, letting Gen Z know they exist, there's some sort of disconnect between the two to get those people in the jobs. So again, talking about entry level and then kind of shifting more towards the long-term and permanent career paths. We're looking at a few-year trend here. So there are jobs in the tourism industry with desirable pay and benefits. So this is going to be the US average. So 51% agree that it is desirable pay and benefits.
Looks like we lost Kelsey's connection here. Let's see if we can get her reconnected really quickly.
And if not, I will of course hop in. So let's just
Sounds
give it a
good.
minute here.
All All right, we'll see if we can get her to join again really quickly. There we go. I can see you, Kelsey.
Hey, sorry about that. I don't know what happened.
That's okay.
Let me,
We're back on. Let me make sure you can share your screen.
cool, thank you.
I think you should be good to go. There we are.
Thanks so much.
Thank
Sorry,
you,
guys.
Kelsey.
I did not move on slides, so hopefully whatever I said was not groundbreaking, but I mean, I am really entertaining, so you did miss that. But no, so we're talking about like the career paths now, and we're seeing that there is an increase in the belief that jobs in the tourism industry have desirable pay and benefits. And there's a lot of work that us as destinations have put into this, working with advocates in the legislation to get minimum wages lifted, to provide more benefits, again, to get people into this industry. So I think it is paying off. It is a slow trajectory towards the positive, but we are seeing some gains there. But when we look at this question broken down by generations, we once again see that millennials are more positive. So 58% of them think that there's desirable pay and benefits. Again, this age range, this 30 plus age range, are probably going to be more managerial level roles, people who have been in the industry for a while and are starting to see those more desirable pay and benefits than maybe some of the entry level jobs that the Gen Z would be seeing, which could be a reason why we're seeing some of the lower positives for that generation. When we're talking about career advancement and the opportunities there, we're seeing, again, kind of the same from what we saw in 2021. So not huge shifts, not huge gains here. But we are at that 50% threshold that people do understand there are opportunities for advancement in tourism careers. And one good thing to note is that we are seeing a decline in those that disagree, but we're still seeing a third that just aren't sure. And this is where, again, the DMOs have a great opportunity to be communicating with the local residents. So when we're talking about jobs, and I know that we have covered, like, yes, just job opportunities in general. There are a lot, everyone understands that there's a lot of openings, but do we think that they are long-term jobs? Are they careers, or is it just those entry level, the low paying, and the seasonal? So here we're looking at that US norm. So about 49% agree that most industry jobs are low paying and seasonal. But we do, again, have that large in the gray, neutral, but we have seen a 5-point increase in the positive for those since 2020. Most jobs in the tourist industry by generation. So again, we keep saying that millennials are positive, but here them agreeing is actually kind of a negative statement. So while millennials note that there are a lot of career opportunities, there are a lot of entry-level jobs, they're also agreeing that most of them are paying in seasonal. So how do we get this group, the millennials and the Gen X, who are at the top here? These are, again, those hiring managers, most likely. They are the ones creating the job opportunities. What can we do to talk with them about spinning the opportunities into a positive when they are talking to Gen Zs or others within their generation about the opportunities within the industry? And then I like this one a lot. So the tourism industry offers rewarding careers. So this goes beyond just pay and benefits, but internally rewarding. Do you see yourself in this role, kind of? Again, millennials are the highest here at 54% agreeing, but Gen Z at the bottom with 42%. I also thought it was funny here that the silent generation, I know most of them are retired, but even 44% of them are saying that tourism industry offers rewarding careers. But I like their honesty that 41% just don't know. Like, they aren't in the career space at the moment. So they're honest and say they don't know. And then I would encourage my friends and family to work in the tourism industry. So the US norm is here at top, with about 40% of people agreeing that they would encourage their friends and family to work in our industry. 51%, which is the highest, comes from millennials. And then the lowest here is that silent generation. So they're not telling their grandkids to work in tourism. I know that I've heard a lot of stories about people who go to career fairs and then wanting to get people to go into the hospitality sectors, but parents and grandparents are saying, no, don't do that. Here's so many other opportunities. So how do we contradict those voices who are talking to Gen Z? How do we become a louder voice? How do we get them more involved? Because they're right here at 34%. They aren't encouraging their friends and family, and we're hearing that they don't even think that there are a lot of opportunities in this space in general. So it really needs to start with that Gen Z. This is our room for most improvement, I would say, because when we're looking at all the generational gaps, this neutral here for Gen Z is one of the highest. So again, it's so much easier to get someone who's unsure to make a final decision, and we want that to be positive. We don't want the negative voice to get to them first. So just a few 4 key high level takeaways for you guys that kind of hit on all of the things that Brian and I mentioned. So the first one would be stewardship and advocacy. As you heard both of us say, talk to your residents, talk to your residents, talk to your residents. And that's really what that is here. So in general, we had a positive year for resident sentiment towards tourism, and we need to keep momentum going with continued destination stewardship and advocacy efforts to shift more of those in the neutral to the positive. Then beyond that, you need to stay engaged. This is not just a once a year kind of press release that you give to the mayor or the governor. You have to stay engaged with everyone within your community. But first, you have to know how your residents think. You can put a bunch of work into plan A, but really your residents have wanted plan B all along, and you wouldn't know that if you don't talk to them first. So get a local pulse check on your community and then engage in community alignment conversations based on that feedback. Make sure that they understand you asked, but then you also listened. You didn't just put it out there for face value. You're actually taking the findings and putting it into action to benefit them as well. And so along with that is creating a plan. So residents understand that tourism brings both positive and negative impacts. So communicate that, like your plan about how you're balancing these impacts by creating a community engagement plan. This will allow you to continue to reinforce the values of tourism and how they contribute to residents' quality of life. And then lastly, goes along with what I had just talked about in that last section, is workforce. So even though that we've made great strides this year in workforce, Gen Z continues to lag behind all the other generations in terms of their sentiment towards the desirability and growth opportunities of a career in tourism. So we need you to continue to highlight the success stories via targeted workforce outreach, engagement, and recruitment. And it's really important to start at the high school level or even earlier if you can. But we've got a couple fun things. So this is not all for resident sentiment that Longwoods will be providing in the next few months. So like we've mentioned several times, we've done this in partnership with Destinations International. And so in December, well, next month already, crazy, time flies. So next month, the full report will be available via DI. So if you have a membership, make sure to keep an eye out there. And that'll include US and Canadian findings. So I know today we focus mostly on the US, but we do also have Canadian numbers that we have done this for. And the report will include more of generational breakouts than what we covered today. And then it'll also include regional results. We have like Midwest numbers, Southeast numbers, so really interesting stuff there. And then early next year, Longwoods International will come out with a complimentary white paper that's available to everyone. And that'll include top things to know and even more findings than what we covered today, which right? How is that possible? We had 50 some slides of data, but I promise there is more. But if you do have questions, here is Brian and I's contact information. So take a quick screenshot, or I think our contact info is also in the email from TTRA. But we thank you guys so much. We really appreciate your time, and we'd love to see if you have any questions. I can stop my share here.
Fantastic. Thank you both so much. And I see that Brian has answered several of our questions in the chat. It looks like we do have a new one. Oh, Brian's on it.
So I'll just answer live instead of typing out. I know it's Pavlina, thank you for sending this in. The question is there a plan to explore ideas and opportunities for more management of tourism rather than focusing on growth? Not all residents want more tourism, and more tourism is not sustainable in many areas. So actually, back in early 2023, Longwoods acquired a company called Clarity of Place that is focused on destination management and primarily that strategic place, right, of how can we look at this more holistically. So if you are interested in learning more on that, I'd be happy to share information and connect you with those folks. Again, Clarity of Place is now a Longwoods subsidiary.
That's wonderful. Thank you, Brian. All right, we'll take a second and see if we have any more questions come into the Q&A. But I will let you all know, first of all, thank you all for being here today. Brian, Kelsey, thank you so much for all of your insights and information. Everyone who is registered for this call will receive a follow-up email with the link to either download and view this recording, or if you're not a member of TTRA, you'll be able to purchase this recording for $30. I don't think we have any more questions right now. Good stuff. Really liked the workforce discussion from Nate Kelly.
Thanks, Nate.
Yeah, great. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Well done from Steve. Well, I think that's great. We will follow up with contact information as well. You can always reach out to info@ttra.com, and you can look forward to more information on this recording